Welcome. I'm excited to be here today with one of the authors of the book Midlife Reimagined, Kathy O'Neill. I'm going to bring her to the stage and we're going to introduce her. We're going to talk a little bit about the book and so I'm excited to introduce her and to share her story. Um, Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, thanks for having me, Sally. My name's Kathy O'Neill, and I'm a transition coach. And my business is What's Next Transition Coaching. And it's really about how we as individuals manage change, because change is hard, but it's also inevitable. It happens every day. Sometimes they're really big changes, and sometimes they're just minor ones. But I think that's when you really test who you are and, some people can really embrace change and some people run from it. So there's like a whole spectrum. And I work with individuals to just help them manage change with more ease so that the next time they, experience something like a new job, a new career, change in partnership, any of the big changes, retirement, you name it. Um, I help people really come to terms with the change and also transitioning from who they are before the change and then who they become after the change.
Yeah, it's almost like a growth mindset, right? It's learning how to live your life a different way.
Yeah, I think we're all capable. I think we just develop patterns of how we manage change, and we just carry those patterns throughout our lifetime. And some of it, involves fear and can be very paralyzing. And I think that we just have to step back as individuals and say, okay, where's the fear coming from? Where are those patterns coming from? How did I develop them? And it really asks you to think about who you are as an individual. And it really asks you to come home to yourself and say, okay, I'm this person that's always been there, but I may be a lot of different people because I have a partner, I have a job, or I have a career, I have kids, whatever it is. I think we tend to, you know, almost change our personality depending on who we're with and what our circumstances are. And I think what I always ask individuals to do is say, okay, who are you, Sally? Like, because we're always who we are. We just have to remember that and kind of get rid of the fear because usually that's based on some story you've decided to tell about yourself. That I'm not capable, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. And so we all create stories about what we can and cannot do. And so really my purpose is to go deep and say, okay, what are your stories that you've been hanging on to your entire lifetime, probably? What's the source of them? And maybe it's time to let them go because they're just not serving you anymore. You developed them at some point in your life because they were helpful and they protected you, and now it's time to just release them. And once you do, then possibility becomes huge for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, we lose ourselves in the chaos and the busyness of life. We
Yeah.
have, especially I think as women, we have so many responsibilities to our families or our jobs, our careers, or, our pets, our houses and
Yeah.
groceries and cooking, and it's like endless. And um, when that changes, we lose, who we are.
Yeah.
With where, especially like I had a, my mom passed away and I was a caregiver. And so, that job of caregiving I did for 5 years. And then after she passed away, that kind of changed now who I am. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of us go through, those certain seasons in our lives when we're one thing to somebody and then that shifts and it changes and we now we need to figure out, okay, who are we if we don't have that responsibility? Or who are we if we have to do it differently?
Yeah, that's perfectly said, really, because we do kind of get in this mode of being, this way of being. You were a caregiver, right? And then who are you now that you're not a caregiver anymore? It's like that was who you were. And I think what I'm asking people to do is just be like, you are who you are no matter what you're doing and no matter what your circumstances are. And to own that, to own who you are, and that can guide you going forward. We're all in survival mode right now. Um, Not only do we have whatever it is we are dealing with on a personal level, on a career level, job level, but we're also dealing with a pretty chaotic world right now. And so th we have layers of stress, right? We have our own stresses, the stresses of people around us that we feel, and then we have the stress of the world. And that's really difficult to manage. And so if you can just kind of go, okay, who am I in all these circumstances? Um, it can really reveal to you what you're capable of.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your chapter? You wrote a chapter in the book, Midlife Reimagined. For anyone listening, if you want to grab a copy of this book, and I encourage you to read Kathy's chapter. It's available at actiontakerspublishing.com/books. Head on over there and you can get the book there. But you wrote a chapter in this book, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what this book meant to you and why you decided to write a chapter in this book.
Oh, yeah. So, the book is as it says, it's midlife reimagined, right? And it's all about making a change at any age. And what I've come to learn, and this is through personal experience, is that um, I had a lot of stories that I developed over the years, and they were really limiting and they were really getting in my way and they were really keeping me small. And so, what I wanted to focus on, and what I've been saying a little bit while we've been talking, is that it's just really critical to kind of go, okay, what are these stories I keep telling myself about myself? So mine were, I don't belong, I don't matter, I'm not smart enough, I'm not lovable. Those were all based on childhood trauma and pain that I didn't even understand. So I created these stories because of experiences that I had. And they just stuck with me, like you don't even know you have them. And
Right.
so the work is to say, okay, what are my stories and are they even true? Because they're usually not even true. Um, and in fact, I would say almost every time they're not true. It's just what you've decided to about yourself, you know.
Right.
And so what I reveal in my chapter is really my journey, like I just got I just hit a wall. I got really sick of carrying these stories around with me. They were like rocks in my pocket, they just weighed me down and they really affected how I lived my life and how I saw the world. And so once I started really looking at those stories and letting them surface, I did the work on, okay, are they true or not? And I really had to go, okay, if my story is I'm not smart enough, how did I get a degree from Yale? If my story is um, I'm not lovable, what about all my friends and family? They rely on me and they look to me for advice. And, if my story is I don't belong, I have so many friends and family and acquaintances even that prove differently. And so I had to go through the exercise and it was an extensive one. Okay, what are all the things that my accomplishments, personal and professional, that I have in my arsenal to prove that my stories are not true? And because you can you can create a story and decide it's true, you know, and nothing's going to tell you differently until you gather the data that proves otherwise. And sometimes even gathering the data, people don't always believe it because they don't want to, it's hard for you to believe about yourself that, oh, wait, I am smart. Oh, wait, I do belong. I do matter.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my chapter is really about my journey, but it also gives people, practices and ex describes ways to um, unravel those stories, to have them surface, unravel them, and then let them go. It's really all about awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, you
One of
know,
our authors calls it self-bullying. You know,
mm,
we bully ourselves,
yeah,
and talk in the words that we say to ourselves are things we would never say to anyone else.
yeah,
And, we're our own worst enemy. And, it's time to, make yourself your best friend.
yeah,
Yeah, so I love that idea. And you talked about how, you had to go through the journey. And
mm,
that's one of the things that I love about, this book is that the things that you went through you're able to now help the readers go through.
yeah,
Your journey becomes the thing that people look to and say, hey, if she did it, I could do it. And
mm,
that's so important to share your stories because of that, because your trials, your accomplishments can encourage and help someone else reading to do that too. And you talked about a little bit about, interrupting your pattern and
mm.
interrupting your, saying, wait a minute, I'm not stupid, and then going through and I think that's, so important to interrupt to when be aware that we're thinking these things, to have that awareness and then interrupt it and stop it and come up with now ways that we can fix ourselves.
Yeah, we can change the way our our mind takes things in, right? So you can create new neural pathways. And so if my if I'm always beating myself, like you said, like self-bullying, if I catch myself doing it, again, it's back to awareness. If you catch yourself yelling at yourself because you dropped something on the floor, as little as that, or um, you wish you had said something differently, or whatever it is, and you chastise yourself, you can catch yourself and change the narrative right then and there. So you can be like, I'm okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just figuring it out as I go along, and that's okay. Whatever it is that kind of puts it in more of a positive tone, the more you do that, the more you literally can change your neural pathways so that your old ways of thinking and being just get completely interrupted and you develop new ways of understanding yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Now, this book has already been out. It's already been
Mm.
published. We've launched it. Um, how was that process for you? Is there anything that surprised you in that process? Is there anything that's happened since I mean, it's been out now for a few weeks. Is there anything that has occurred um, because of the launch of the book?
I've gotten such great feedback from people of just they really appreciated my how I shared my vulnerability and they really saw themselves in my story and so they could relate to it. And I think that's the best praise ever, because if I can inspire someone just by being who I am, and telling my story, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that what I love about this book is that there's these 19 women who just said, I'm going to tell my story. And when you hear praise and you hear people say, wow, thank you. Thank you for telling your story. It really made a difference to me. That's, that's such a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're talking to Kathy O'Neill. She's one of the authors in Midlife Reimagined. Please, if you're listening, head on over to actiontakerspublishing.com/books and pick up your copy. Kathy, what do you want the readers to take away from reading your chapter in the book?
It's never too late. I'm 66 years old, and it took me the last few years to really get to where I am today. And I feel like I'm finally myself. And so I would just want to say to someone, it doesn't matter how old you are. Um, you can do the work. Everyone's capable of it. And it's so incredibly worth it to do it because I just have a sense of freedom and liberty and joy that I've literally never experienced before. Like I feel very different about who I am and how I interact with the world. And and I'm really grateful for that.
So if people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
They can go to what's next transitioncoaching.com. That's my website. And there's a place there that you can reach out to me. I'm also on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, Kathy O'Neill. And I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. So you should be able to find me pretty easily.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Kathy, it was a pleasure meeting you and thank you for being part of this book and for sharing your story in it.